Okay, our study tonight is on the Genesee Diary from Henri Nouwen. Here is one of his prayers. Dear God, I so much want to be in control. I want to be the master of my own destiny. Still, I know that you are saying, quote, let me take you by the hand and lead you. Accept my love and trust that where I will bring you, the deepest desires of your heart will be fulfilled, unquote. Lord, open my hands to receive your gift of love. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. That's a nice prayer.
Yep.
Where did you find it?
Well, I subscribe to the Henri Nouwen Society, so every day they send a prayer and then some interview that somebody's done with them, or right now they're doing Philip Yankee's new his new book anyway. What?
Yancey.
Thank you. Yeah. So they have a variety of things there, but always a little devotional.
Yeah, I didn't remember that prayer. I get those as well.
This is February 1st.
Okay, great. Maybe that's a day I didn't read it or something. I try to read it every day, but
well, I don't read them every day, so I was going back and deleting a bunch of them.
Yeah.
After I read them.
Did you listen to the podcast with Yancey yet?
No, I haven't done that. No.
It was a good listen. It was good.
So is that a brand new book that Yancey has out?
Must be.
Okay.
I just enjoyed hearing about his childhood. I really haven't read Yancey, but I know a lot of people have, and he's quite a popular author, but it was a good interview.
His toxic childhood religion, as he talks about.
Yeah.
I've read others books that he's talked about that, and then how his father-in-law, who was a biblical professor, helped him to really see God as loving rather than a taskmaster.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's worth the listen, that's for sure. So if you listen to this later, that's the Henri Nouwen Society. Just do a Google search on it and you'll find it.
So the book, the Genesee Diary, Henri was keeping almost daily thoughts as he was spending his 7 months with the Trappist monks who live in solitude, silence, and inner peace. So he was keeping the diary for himself, but then was encouraged to publish it by somebody that read it, his friends, I would assume. I'll start out with the raisin story in the bakery. Do you recall the raisin story? Okay. So there was I don't remember how many pounds of raisins there were, but it was a goodly amount. And as they were being cleaned and transferred, one of the monks heard a ping of a little stone. So they had to go back through all of those to find the little stone. And he likens that to our little sins that are easy to dismiss because they're just little.
I did not know that monks in a monastery worked so dang hard. I mean, I was like, wow, they really work hard.
Yeah, what did he say? 15,000 loaves of bread? At least
tremendous amount.
At least once a week, or was it maybe 3 times a week? I don't know. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was a lot. So is that common for monks that go there in silence? They just work their fingers to the bone?
Well, I don't think they work their fingers to the bone, but I think they do work to stay busy. I mean, he talks about how hard it is to, keep your mind focused. And so work is meant to help you spend your daytime.
It seemed like it was fairly physical, though. A lot of the stuff they did. Yeah.
Carrying stones.
Yeah.
Well, and part of that was because Henri was not used to doing physical work, so he would be focused on that. His was more a professor, an intellect, teacher.
And I may have missed, why were they always going out looking for stones or carrying stones around? What were they doing with them?
Was it for the garden, or I don't remember either way they were.
They went to the stream to look for more stones or to move more stones. And I thought, what are you doing?
So does he, so you said he relates this episode, because it turned out to be a stone that really looked like the raisins, right? It was kind of purplish and small.
Yeah.
The only
But it went ping.
Right. Yeah, that was the only reason that they found it, is the one monk could hear it. But he said, I can't even notice my own little sins. Do you think he's saying he should?
Yeah, I think it's easy for me to overlook my little sins. The big ones, kind of slap me in the face, but the little ones, maybe nobody noticed but me, type of thing.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about that in relationship to the sermon today and the scripture today, where Jesus, he ends chapter 6 by saying, "Don't judge," and the measure you give, it'll be the measure you get. And I thought, we are just so conditioned to judge, aren't we? I mean, we just, and we don't even, I just don't even, we're judging all the time in a sense. But so, yeah, Caroline, I think I'm affirming what you're saying. Sometimes we get so used to our own little sins that we even stop looking or noticing.
But I can notice everybody else's little sins if I choose to.
That's true. Yeah.
Yes. I have kind of an odd question. So he talks about this John Eudes or Eudes. Why does he always say his first and last name? Like, couldn't he? Why would say, I told John Eudes today. I talked to John. Why wouldn't he just say John?
I think because there's a lot of Johns and a lot of.
Okay. I just noticed with that one that he always said his last name too.
Because there's John Baptist too, I think. And
okay, so maybe that's why.
Yeah, I think he's just pointing out which John.
Okay.
Was that your impression, Carolyn?
I guess I didn't pay much attention to that, other than he valued the words of John a lot. So he must have been in the hierarchy of the Trappist society. He was the leader, right?
I think so. Yeah.
It almost sounded like it was somebody that was a mentor to him, or somebody that he valued his opinion or whatever.
So Henri says, in meditating, we need to empty ourselves for God. And that includes our thoughts, feelings, worries. We need to make those into our prayers.
Where are you?
In emptying myself?
No, in the book.
Oh, in the book. Well, in these notes, I don't say where I'm at.
Okay.
It's still in the beginning. After a while, I'll say page 63, but I have 2 more things to go through before I get there. So, okay. Yeah,
that is so hard to just free your mind of everything. It's almost impossible, I think, sometimes. To think of nothing. Yeah.
Do you feel like it's gotten harder with the pandemic, or is it just me? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe because we're alone more, I think. And so I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess when I'm alone, I tend to think constantly, or there's always something going through my mind.
What was that word he used for that? Nepsis or?
Yeah, I didn't focus on that because I'm not familiar with that, even though he defined it. So
yeah, well, he defined it as controlling your thoughts. It's what I remember. So, I mean, how many of us are any good at that?
And in one of his recent devotions, he talks about loneliness, or who's ever writing them talks about loneliness, and they go through this process of, so if we don't have another project to do, if we don't have another book to read, that's my, or if we don't have another person to visit or whatever, then we try to fill that space because we don't want to be lonely. And that's when, to me, that's part of emptying yourself for God, is allowing myself to be in that lonely place.
Yeah, let your loneliness drive you to God rather than to the things of the world.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think that loneliness concept hit home for me because to me, there's a huge difference between being alone by choice and being alone because there's nobody to be with. I know that's a big deal for me. So when I went off to college, I went somewhere where nobody else from Forest City went. I didn't know anybody. So I was lonely. I was homesick because I didn't know anybody. And I was put in a situation where I just felt like I didn't have a choice. I felt lonely, but now I choose to live alone. And so when I live alone now, I'm usually not lonely because this is my choice to live alone. And so to me, there's a huge difference. There just is. I don't know. It might be hard to explain, but big difference for me between having nothing to do because I choose or wishing somebody would ask me to do something.
Well, the other side of that is you can be with a whole lot of people and be lonely.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
That is true.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense. It does make sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this next one, I'm going to quote of what he says. I was hoping I had the page, but again, I don't have that yet. He says, be committed without becoming a fanatic, open-minded without becoming wishy-washy. If either one of you noted that someplace and you know where it's at.
I don't know where it's at.
I kind of remember it, but I don't know where it is.
And was that a reference to the monastic life?
I think so. Mm-hmm.
Be committed, but not fanatic. Be, what was the second part of it? Be
open-minded without being wishy-washy.
Yeah. Do you think we have a natural polarity in a sense that we would be drawn to one of those more than the other? I mean, I think Henri would tend to be pretty much a fanatic about anything he set out to do, wouldn't he?
Oh, and I was going to say he'd be more open-minded because he's always with new people and everything. He'd have to be open-minded as he goes out and speaks and everything. But
right. Yeah.
So he's cautioning us against both of those.
Yeah.
And then the next thing I'll cover without referring to a page is his anger when he talks about 5 steps to how he looks at anger. And that was what surprised me the most about the book, is that he has not dealt with his anger before now. It's like, whoa, okay. Because he's been with so many people all these years and everything.
Right.
But I think he's finding that in that dailiness of this Trappist life that he gets irritated more easily than what he thought he would by little things, which appear to be little things.
He does. I see that. I don't know where those 5 things are, but he does talk a lot about anger on 57. And it was July 4th, a bad day. I felt low, depressed, morose most of the day. The morning work in the bakery made me tired. In the afternoon, Anthony made me take down with a sledgehammer the part of the gate post we couldn't finish. It was hot and I had no energy left. I was angry because with better equipment, I could do in 5 minutes what would take me at least a day. He was just kind of pissed off about the whole thing, you know?
When there's a simpler way to do it, yeah.
Right, everything was just irritating him that day.
So on page 44, he talks about anger.
Okay.
There's five different
There it
things that
is.
he talks about. Most important for me at this point seems to be the following 5 suggestions. Allow your angry feelings to come into awareness and have a careful look at them. Do not hesitate to talk about angry feelings. Your anger can have good reasons. And on a deeper level, you might wonder how much of your anger has to do with your ego inflation.
So he's a psychologist by training, but he hasn't.
Oh, that's right.
But he hasn't dealt with his own anger. Now he's talking to us about our anger.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so he says, so that the next sentence on the bottom of that page, and he's talking about John again, which John basically is saying, listen to your anger, deal with it, don't walk away from it.
Are either of you familiar with Enneagram material?
Years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't need to really go into it. It's kind of a craze right now. There's kind of a Enneagram movement, and I don't really know what's spurring that. I don't know what's driving it, but there are 9 different personality traits, you might say, and the reason I just think about it is that 1 through 3 are anger. Those personality traits are motivated by anger. 4, 5, and 6 are motivated by fear, and 7, 8, and 9 are motivated by shame, I believe. I think that's right. So Henry's probably 4. He's probably a 1, 2, or a 3. He's probably a 1, I would guess, as an oldest child. Very responsible, a pleaser. But just thinking about that in connection with his journey here through going into the spiritual depths, I think we all have to deal with those barriers to going deeper, and it seems to me like this is one of those barriers for him.
Yeah, I think later he talks about when he looks at himself more closely, then there's things that embarrass him and are shameful, and he doesn't like to look at those. I'm not seeing where my notes are on that, but again, this John says to him that's important to look at those. Don't walk away from them. Okay, I'm going to go over to page 63. And this chapter is "You Are the Glory of God." And he talks about desert fathers, which I used to have a hard concept about desert fathers, but I figured them out now. It's any of us is going away from the world and reflecting on our relationship with God. Most of us don't go out in the desert to do that anymore, but that was a big movement within the Catholic Church. So he says, when you leave the world to give yourself to God, there is no return.
What does that mean?
Well, I'm not so sure that I agree with that.
I don't know if that I do either, but
no. But him being a Catholic priest and a theologian, he really, I'm sure he sees it as no return. Where I can be deep in my faith and say and give myself completely to God, but then there's times when I go, oh no, okay, God, no, that's not where I'm at right now.
So you've usurped how, I haven't gotten this far in the book yet. I had trouble getting very far this week, but is he, in the next sentence, he says it is an echo not only of Jesus' call to leave everything behind and follow him, but also of the many voices of the desert fathers. Is he, I mean, Jesus went into the wilderness, right, for 40 days. Is he suggesting that we don't return the same person that we went, as who we left? Is that what he's getting at?
That would make sense.
There's
So
not
he
many
says,
of us.
I am plainly and simply scared of the quote, no return, in fear that the road of total commitment to God is arduous, painful, and very lonely.
Well, not many of us do the leave everything behind,
Right.
walk away from everything. And do we have to truly give ourselves to God?
I would say no, as lay people, we don't have to walk away from everything. Perhaps if we're called, as Henri is, to be a priest, that would be a different situation.
Well, and again, what does it mean to leave everything? I think what Henri would suggest is that it's a spiritual act more than a physical act, isn't it? I mean, to be disconnected from the world in the sense that you no longer pursue the things of the world, and so much as you do pursue Jesus or God. I think that's so it could be more of a spiritual leaving behind than it is a physical leaving behind. Because you're right. I mean, not many people are called to leave everything behind physically and
Right.
follow Jesus.
So then at the last paragraph on page 63, then he talks about that wishy-washy, wanting to keep a foot in both worlds, but that is how one stumbles.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what he see there. So keeping a foot in both worlds means staying attached to the world in the sense that it may take over. That makes me think a little bit of Luther's two kingdoms theory, just where we have as Christians we have a foot in each world. And we're called to use our Christianity to bless the world, to make the world a better place, and to honor God, and to help others see God in us, rather than withdraw from the world. I think that's what Luther would say, is that as Lutherans we believe in vocation. So our vocation, whatever our vocation is in the world, we'll always have one foot in that, but we live in that vocation, or we live that vocation out as a way to glorify God, not to glorify ourselves. And that's something Henri wrestles with all the time, right? Doing things for self-recognition and that sort of thing. But if we can let go of that and do what we're called to do in this world, using our best gifts, the outcome hopefully would be that we would honor God and bring glory to God's name.
And I would suggest, based on knowing some of Luther's struggles with his faith, that we have an easier time of being faithful to God, because he was always struggling with demons coming after him, and that he was sinning constantly. So he was flogging himself and confessing. And it's like, whoo, he struggled so to walk in his faith.
Well, and he was an extremist, wasn't he? Wouldn't you say that would be accurate?
Yeah,
probably to his own detriment. It wasn't until he read that passage from Ephesians or Romans where it says, you're you're not saved by your own works, you're saved by faith. That he finally let go of that fanatic extremism of trying to earn God's salvation, and God's love. So I would say that he's an example of what Nouwen is talking about here a little bit by not getting hooked into the extremism of this kind of aesthetic life. What does that mean?
Well, because Luther didn't want to be a leader of Reformation, but he was. So on some level, he had to be a fanatic about his faith.
Yeah. Right time at the right guy at the right time, I guess.
Yeah, because 100 years before that, there was another famous person, I can't remember who it was, who tried to do the same things within the Catholic Church, and he was,
right.
I was going to say he was crucified. He was not listened to, and Luther.
Yeah, John Huss.
Yes.
Yeah, and he was burned at the stake. Yeah.
Well, he was crucified then. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Nouwen himself probably isn't being called to be an extremist, but what you're saying, Carolyn, is that there may be times when we are called, when someone is called to that extremism.
I think most of us haven't had opportunity, if you want to say opportunity, to be extremists.
Yeah. Because
our lives are pretty stable for the most part. Even pandemic, they're still pretty stable lives.
Right.
On page 65, Henri says, I have always had a strange desire to be different than other people. That was not sure why he was saying it when he's there with the monks, but because with the monks would be all basically alike, and he's not wanting to do that. Oh, it's on Saturday the 13th. I have always had a strange desire to be different than other people.
Yeah, he wants to be different, special, noticed.
And he already is because of all his speaking and everything.
Right.
Does he recognize that need as a demon that needs to be exorcised in using biblical language? I mean, I'm trying to remember why he came to what were his reasons for coming here in the first place? Was he burned out? Was he?
Well, yeah, probably because he was coming off in a speaking engagement, which would be several months on the road, it sounded like, when he first approached to see if he could be there with the Trappist monks for a while. But I think it was 2 years before they said, yes, you can come and spend some time with us.
And he's talking about making the dangerous possibility of making the word of God sensational. So if there's a preacher that uses the word of God to draw attention to himself, then those motives aren't pure. But a sensational preacher stimulates the senses and leaves the spirit untouched, it says. Instead of being the way to God, his being different gets in the way. So I think he's worried about that.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to read this more closely.
The bottom of page 66, the last paragraph. The monastic life is indeed very unsensational. I keep catching myself with a desire to do something special, to make a contribution, to add something new, and to have to remind myself constantly that the less I am noticed, the less special attention I require, the less I am different, the more I am living the monastic life. So he's really struggling with all of this.
Isn't I mean, I wrestle with that too. I feel like in Forest City there is, and I know it's not just unique to Forest City, but just being in ministry, it seems like there is a certain, I don't know if it's a personality of people or what I would say, but there are people who want to follow the man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I've never wanted anybody to follow me. I want people to know Jesus through me and to follow Jesus. But you know, and there are times when I wish I was more charismatic, and there are times when I wish, you know, that just my personality would draw the crowd, you know. But I mean, honestly, I think you could take the word monastic out of that paragraph and put the word Christian. The Christian life is indeed very unsensational in a sense. You know?
And on the next page, she says, when we have given up the desire to be different and experienced ourselves as sinners without any right to special attention, only then is there space to encounter our God, who calls us by our own name and invites us to his intimacy. So we need to give up that attention-seeking behavior, because that's when we can really find God.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. I mean, because that could happen with assisting ministers, or that could happen with you know, readers, or it could happen with it can happen in any arena of our life, right? That we can be seeking our own attention for ourselves.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we in some ways are called to become insignificant, you know, so that it becomes God who is significant. There's a song that we sing on Wednesday nights sometimes called Nobody. I'm just a nobody trying to tell everybody about somebody who saved my soul. I like that line.
Yeah.
I had a friend who did a lot of public speaking on spiritual issues. And she used to say to me, she said, I always pray that I will be, that they will see me behind the cross. And I had to ask her what she meant by that. And that's exactly what she said. I don't want them seeing me as special. They need to see the cross of Christ in my speech, in my talk. Because she was very charismatic. So you could easily say, yep, I want to be just like her.
Sure.
And she's saying, nope, the cross of Jesus is what you need to see.
Yeah, I know some of the assisting ministers have struggled a little bit with feeling like they need to be perfect. And I always say, you know, look, if we're leading worship and we do it perfectly, those young people out there are never going to say, you know, they're always going to say, well, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And
Right. And that's like, I don't worry.
What I wanted to say is,
yeah.
What's that?
That's right. I think today, once during the Lord's Prayer and once during something else, I didn't follow the words exactly right. I
know. In the Lord's Prayer, you didn't.
I know.
You got the words in there.
And I'm like, okay, well, I'm a person. I just don't let it get to me.
Right.
And, you know, if my knee's bothering me, I got to walk really slow up the steps. Okay. I mean, I'm just not going to let that bother me because I'm not being perfectly on time or saying whatever. And I just, because I don't want that image, you know, I want to just be, oh, well, she's a person. She messed up, you know?
Right.
And I'm not going to let it bother me.
Yeah. And so others might say, well, I could do that. You know, I mean,
right.
Because we're all
might
human.
stand up when you're not supposed to. And then you're like, okay, guess I'll sit down.
Yeah. And it's all good. I really liked your sermon today and the delivery of it on several fronts. I liked the message, and I always like it when you talk more instead of read, and I felt you did that. I really liked it today. I thought it was really good. It was
praise God. That's what I always say. Well, praise be to God.
I don't know. It was very good. The message was delivered very well today. I liked it.
Well, I'm going to have to go back and listen to it because I had a hard time following it. So we're speaking to two different people, as pastors often are.
Yeah. Well, and I had asked him ahead of time, kind of what's the concept today. So I was kind of listening for certain parts of it. Sometimes
I can tell that in your prayers.
That helps me focus a little bit when I know kind of, and I'll ask Zach that too. I'll say, so what are you talking about today? And I just like that 2 or 3 sentence synopsis of what the main message is. It helps me kind of look for that, I guess. So I like that. You're on mute, Rod.
If we can't give you that 1 or 2 sentence synopsis, we're probably not ready to preach.
I know, right? Well, and then sometimes I know what I want to add or tweak the prayers to be too. So it just helps me. So
what was the 2 or 3 synopsis today? So I don't have to go back and re-listen to it.
It was about the patronage, and that was not a good thing back in the day. And that, Jesus is our patron, but he's a good one.
Yeah. Well, God is our patron, and
God is our patron. Yeah.
And I guess I ended by saying we're called to be patrons of that love of God as well, and give it freely, give it excessively, give it without cost or without price.
We didn't get
out. I had a hard time stepping into the fact that I need to be behold. When you handed out the money, I was going to say, well, I'll just take it and go shopping. And I go, no, this is serious, Carolyn. You can't do that. Yeah. And because as a American, I have my freedom of choice. And I said, no, that's not what the sermon is about.
They laughed, Rod.
What's that?
Plate in case he needs it later. And they thought that was funny.
You cut out.
The money. Yes.
Oh, right.
I said that we were going to do the offering, and I said, you can put your Monopoly money back in the plate in case he needs it later. And then they laughed. I did say that. Yeah. And we went until like 10:25 today.
I know.
Yeah. But it just, well, you didn't get done preaching until what was it? 10:02.
Something like that.
Yeah. And then I don't know, communion took a while, and I don't know.
I thought
but it was all good.
Do time out because you were preaching so long, but she didn't. So it's like, okay, I'll keep listening.
But see, I was really enjoying it. I mean, normally I probably would have been going like,
okay.
But it was like, oh, this is really good.
So, where are you going to tonight in terms of the book itself?
The first 100 pages or 95 pages.
Yeah. Okay. So through chapter 2. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, so then I have a note that he said, again, I don't have the page. I am the glory of God. Make that thought the center of your meditation so that it slowly becomes not only a thought, but a living reality. I am the glory of God, which is the chapter, the title, or the title of the chapter.
What do you think he means by that? I am the glory of God.
Well, isn't that back to his, I am God's beloved child?
I think
what it
so.
says to me.
That's what I assumed, but I just kind of wanted to be sure that he's still, or this is probably an earlier book, isn't it? But
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and concerning all his speaking engagements, he used to say, because in his heyday, he was getting lots of requests to speak, and he used to say to them, he would turn down a speaking engagement because he said he had to get prepared, but he said he had it mixed up. He said, do I live in a state of preparedness? So he was telling himself he always needed to be prepared to accept the speaking engagement because he always had, a sermon or something available to preach because he's always in a state of preparedness. That surprised me because he'd done a lot of speaking by then.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, on Monday the 22nd, then he's talking about the statue of Our Lady of
mm-hmm.
Yeah, Our Lady of Valamar. which when we talked a little bit last week, Kathy, that we thought maybe this was, because this book was written before the prodigal son, that this he's already introducing us to the concept of studying something that's so precious to the church, because it's Mary with baby Jesus with his arms around his mother's neck, or at least one hand is, because I looked it up to see, and how meaningful that was to him to study that.
Right. 'Cause he says, I couldn't keep my eyes off this most gentle painting. So he's really captured by visual, like he was with the prodigal son painting. And he's really like dissecting it, he really thinks about what's in there and all the nuances of it, whereas so many of us, we look at something and go, oh, that's nice, and then we move on.
And it was from the 1500s, so obviously it's been an icon in the church for years and years and years when he's looking at it.
Right.
Oh, he calls it an intimate scene. And peace invades my soul. You're right, the nuances of it. On the middle of that page of 80, I'm just reading this. This week, I often experience resistance towards private prayer. Every time I tried to sit down and pray alone, my thoughts wandered to the book I was reading and wanted to continue reading, to my feelings of hunger, to a monk I couldn't figure out, to a hostile feeling or a daydream I couldn't shake off. Usually I ended up reading a few minutes, trying to focus my thoughts again. But when I knelt in front of the icon of Our Lady of Valdemar, it was different. In some way, my resistance against meditation subsided, and I simply enjoyed being invited to enter into the intimacy between Jesus and Mary.
Again, I haven't read this, but I'm struck as you read that in the prodigal son, he wrestled, am I the younger son, the older son, or the father? He eventually got there, but it almost seems to me like in this painting, Mary becomes his mother and invites him into that place.
Yep, and I think he says that was his way to get back to Mary, because he had kind of lost his path of being so connected to Mary.
How do you feel about that? This reverence or devotion to Mary? I guess I don't really have much of a problem with it. There may be Lutherans who do.
I had not really thought about it, I guess, until I read that, and I thought, well, that's interesting. I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't.
Because it's the Jesus typically that we would see in this part of the country is a grown man, obviously, and is Caucasian, which we know is probably not accurate. So,
right.
Yeah. So I guess I don't pay too much attention to those images.
And there certainly was an intimacy between Jesus and Mary. She was at the cross, wasn't she, with him at the cross and watching with the ladies there? I mean, his mom was with him from the beginning to the end, it seems to me like. Jesus, or the angel said, right, when he, at the Annunciation, and what did he say? It will pierce your own soul too. So she, even though she knew that his life would bring her pain and sorrow, she stuck with him, didn't she? Now Nouwen is being invited into that in his own journey. That's pretty neat.
He says, I can allow my other side to grow to maturity and to become less self-conscious. I'm on the middle of 81. Less suspicious, less angry, and more able to receive God's gift. To let the glory of God dwell in me as it dwelled so intimately in Mary. Yeah, very meaningful to him to be studying that icon.
isn't this what, I mean, isn't this where meditation is taking him then, or is he clear about that in this book, that this is his journey? I want to say into seclusion. I'm not sure if that's real accurate, but as he moves more intimately into a intimate relationship with God, he's more able to, I would say, receive the invitations of someone like Mary through this picture. Yeah. So is he clear about this journey, or does it? I mean, does he talk about it in the sense as he moves from day to day that this is what I'll have to figure out when I read it? But does he make clear that he's going deeper into?
No, because he's just reporting on his progress. So I don't think until we read the last half of the book, we'll know
Okay.
Exactly what that journey was like.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we just have to it's almost like we have to keep track of him as he kind of reports daily that this he seems to be deepening his relationship with God, or his meditation practices are becoming more fruitful and that sort of thing. And it sounds like this is a very fruitful time for him. And I think for us, he encouraged us wasn't it the first book to meditate for 30 minutes a day? And that's tough to do. But I still think it's a worthy goal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and he's had to slow down so much of being with the monks to even reach this point of taking that time. I mean, his schedule just sounded so hectic before, with all being on the traveling and speaking engagements. And I don't know if he was a parish priest also, but yeah, so he's just slowing down more all the time, and then allowing God to minister to him more easily. And the other monks, obviously, also.
Right.
So on that same page, I'm not sure where it's at, but it says, Henri says, pay attention to the feelings which are often embarrassing or shameful, and follow to their roots. So that has to be John telling him that, obviously.
That's on the third line in the second paragraph on the 23rd. Second and third line.
Oh, he keeps telling me not to push away disturbing daydreams. Mm-hmm. Do not panic. Do not start running, but take a careful look.
So shame, Carolyn, you're a counselor. Did you deal with shame in your counseling work at all?
That's the hardest thing for people to deal with. Embarrassment is easier than shame, because shame says you're not worthy.
Right.
That's the message we give to ourselves.
Yeah.
So most clients don't even like to go there. Well, I think that's true of most of us. We don't like to go to things that were shameful.
Right. Yeah, when I was in seminary, we had a professor who taught a class on shame, and I didn't get to take it because he was on sabbatical the year I should have taken it. And I always regret not being able to take that. But from what I've learned throughout my ministry, you're exactly right. That yeah, shame is it's hearing that voice of a parent say, you can be seen but not heard.
And it's shame on you. It's pointing to us. The other person's pointing to me saying shame on you. I mean, that gesture just says it all. And we're like, ooh. Yeah, what are we going to do with the shame?
Yeah. Well,
and John says, don't run away from it.
Right. Pay attention to it. Doesn't embarrassment come out of shame? I mean, isn't embarrassment a consequence of shame? If I'm not worthy, if I'm to be heard and not, or seen and not heard, if I'm, getting the finger pointed at me, I mean, it seems to me like they go together, shame and embarrassment.
Yeah, I don't know if they have to go together, but certainly they can.
Probably not. Yeah.
To me, embarrassment is more like, oops, okay, shouldn't have said or done that,
Okay.
which is a little different than shame. Shame's a much deeper thing
Oh, yeah,
to me
yeah.
anyway.
Yes, I would agree with that. Yeah. Embarrassment can be more on the surface, I think. But, yeah.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
we probably have to go to other books to figure out how to deal with those kind of things, embarrassment or shame or anger or fear. But his courage gives me courage that maybe, if there are things in my life that I need to look at, I can do them.
And don't you think we'll get more of that in the last two books also? Can you drink this cup says to me, whoa, am I willing to deal with my sins, my mistakes, my goof ups?
Could be. Yeah, I have not read that book yet either. So.
I haven't either. I have it, but I haven't read it.
It's a shorter one, which is nice. But
yeah, I have it too.
I see it's much shorter. Yep.
So. Well, what do you think? Is there more we want to cover tonight, or how are we doing for time? It's 7:29.
Oh, okay. Let me do Wednesday the 24th. This
Okay.
concept of love. It's in there someplace. Love of ourselves for God's sake. See others through God's love. Obviously, principles we use already. So someplace there.
Yeah, that one's about 2.5 pages long, that 24th.
I see the word love on the last, second to the last line on page 83.
Boy, he really goes into detail on all that.
Yeah.
As you said, Kathy, it's a couple pages. Yep. So, yep. We can dip into that next time. Oh, then his letter writing, which is after that. To me, if you're writing lots of letters and you're receiving them, my mind says, then I'm not removing myself from the world. And if I'm going to live as the monks do, and maybe they get letters, I don't know. It just seemed like he was kind of sabotaging himself.
And then having a pity party if somebody didn't write him back.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's why he needed to keep busy during the day, so he didn't have time for that pity party.
Mm-hmm. It seems like I read, but I can't find it. He talks, I think, about the risk of a pastor ministering to his people, his or her people, well, but at the detriment of their own spiritual needs. So maybe the pastor is really good about caring for others and bringing the word, but isn't getting filled himself, or is feeling empty him or herself. Am I making that up, or did I read that, Carolyn?
Well, here's a note that I have written down, so I don't know what page it's on. When you find your mind competing, plan on an empty time of meditation.
Okay.
So that could be the busyness of life, and you need to stop and do the meditation. Then we see we are not created by others, but by God, not judged by how we compare with others, but how we fulfill the will of God. Not quite what you're saying, but
I thought he specifically talked about pastors, and then because I worry about you guys. I mean, I come in this morning, I'm like, how are you really? I mean, because I worry that you're so worried about everybody else that are you getting what you need? That's a concern that I have. So I'm sure that
I think we were warned. I was warned about that in seminary, that you can be such a good pastor that you lose yourself, and your own spirituality. I think I've worked pretty hard in my 20 some years to, to prevent that. I work with a spiritual director, and I have from time to time seen a counselor. I'm not currently, but kind of feel like I'd like to get back to that too. Just because we need safe spaces, and we need
Right.
Places to kind of dump our stuff. It's hard to do that with your spouse because it sometimes gets to be too much for them. But yeah, I mean, I think I talk with both Zach and Ann about that kind of thing, because it's a real danger. And yeah, I'll be curious to read that, because it's
Well, I hope I didn't make it up. I'm pretty sure I read
No, and it's true with therapists, with teachers, with anybody that's
it. With
in
anybody. Yeah.
authority. Yeah, it's true with you too, Kathy. Yes, we
Mhm.
can pour ourselves out to everybody else and not take care of ourselves, and then
Right.
we all go down the tube.
In parenting, it's a danger as well. So
Yep.
yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But certainly a warning that needs to be heeded, because I mean, I've certainly found myself empty, and it happens quickly. I mean, I think that's true with all of us. You kind of wake up one morning, and I always say that about my own devotional practices. Something can be working in the sense that it's feeding me, real regularly, but then some morning it's like, this just isn't working right now. So it's like almost God is calling you to shift what you're doing, or change, change resources, or whatever. But yeah, certainly that's a warning that we all need to pay attention to, and especially in the helping professions, like you said, Carol.
So next week, next Sunday night, 6:30, we will do the last half of the book.
All right.
Excellent.
Thanks for leading tonight.
Yeah, good.
It's helping me to study Henri, because boy, I've been trying to avoid him for 30 some years. He's too deep for me. And somebody, when I said that to somebody, they kind of questioned that, but that's just where I'm at with Henri. He's too deep for me sometimes. So I'm glad we're studying him.
Yeah, the first book, it was hard for me just really, but this book and the last book I have really felt impactful. So.
All right. Well, have a good night, and God bless.
Hey, thanks.
Blessings to you.
All right. Bye-bye.